Sorry.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, this is different technology as we continue on in our nearly year-long um, situation of working from home and Zoom and technical difficulties are anticipated, and I'm really appreciative of having Juan and Kathy here available to kind of address those. So we'll get through this. And so with that, I'd like to go ahead and move forward. And so I'd like to go ahead now and officially start the meeting and welcome everyone who is here to participate, listen, and share information. And with that, again, I'm Tracy Williams. I'm your Bend Airport Municipal Airport Manager. And I want to go ahead and introduce, I'll turn it over to Travis Wharton, who is a Vice President of Leading Edge Aviation. And Travis, you can take it away and then start your presentation, and then we'll hear from what our airport neighbors want to say. And we're prepared to respond to questions, comments, and concerns. And if we have an answer for you tonight, we'll do it. If we don't have an answer, we'll get back to you. And so with that, I just want to request that all of our listeners who will be participating, please identify yourself just for the record. All right, there we go. Thank you. Travis, it's all you.
Thanks, Tracy. I'm Travis. I'm Vice President of Leading Edge Aviation. We put together a PowerPoint presentation for you guys tonight. It'll explain some of what we do, some of our history, some of the reasons why we do things. And then once we go through that presentation, we'll open it up for questions and hopefully can clarify any other questions that anyone has. So I'm Travis. Over here, this is Jack. He's our Executive Vice President in charge of flight school operations. And then Chris at the end of the table, he is our Chief Helicopter Flight Instructor. So the three of us here, we should be able to answer any questions you have and give. If we can't, then we'll get back to you. At the end of the presentation, our email addresses are there. So if you have questions, feel free to email. Our phone number is there. Feel free to call. So with that being said, I will start the PowerPoint. Everybody can see that? Somebody can see it at least? Okay, Jack, take it away.
Thank you, Travis. And reiterating what Travis said, my name is Jack Walker. I'm in charge of running Leading Edge Flight Academy. Chris back here is our Chief Helicopter Instructor. He's also the Director of Operations for our helicopter charter business. We appreciate the City of Bend for hosting this call. We appreciate working with you, Tracy, as the airport manager, and many within the city, Carolyn and Eric, and also many even in the community around us. To tell you about Leading Edge and what we do, our company's been operating out of the Bend Airport for 15 years. We employ over 100 people. And when you think about Leading Edge, we're really two things. First, we're an FAA-approved professional flight training program. We're here to develop professional pilots. Over 2/3 of our students are veterans of the U.S. military. A lot of them are attending a 2-year aviation degree program at the community college in Central Oregon. These are students that are earning their flight certificates here while earning a degree with the college. When the students complete their program, and they're either airplane or helicopter students, these are the students that are going on to fly your airlines. They're flying for the air cargo companies that deliver the Amazon boxes we're all used to getting. But they're also the people on the helicopter side specifically that fight the fires. They're the ones that are flying the EMS life flight helicopters. And that's really the second part of Leading Edge. In addition to a flight school, we're a 135 helicopter operator. And what that means is we operate for various entities, U.S. Forest Service, the government, and even private entities. And a lot of our energy is spent fighting fire on the contract side. We all remember how bad the fire season was in 2020. Our helicopters spent 154 days fighting fires across Oregon, Northern California. We're here on this call with you all in the city of Bend and Tracy because we want you to understand what we do and why. We also understand what you're seeing from your end and how it impacts you. Our commitment at Leading Edge as a company is to work with you, the community, with Tracy and the airport, and with the city to mitigate all noise and operate harmoniously and safely as possible. I mentioned before that first and foremost, we're a professional pilot program. And what that means, being approved by the FAA's professional pilot program, is that every single flight and every lesson we do has a planned and distinct purpose. So our commitment is that if you in the neighborhood, being the eyes and ears on the ground, witness a lack of professionalism, we want to know about it. We'll handle it quickly. We've done some in the past. And like Travis said, well, our contact information will be at the end. So we rely on your feedback and are thankful for forums like this. The way the rest of our presentation will go, I'll turn it back over to Travis and he'll talk about the Bend Airport and the Bend airspace over time. Travis has been here for almost 15 years. He's got great perspective on the evolutions that we've had as a company and the evolutions that the city and this airport has had. One of those evolutions that we'll talk about is the Fly Friendly program. And then we'll turn it over to Chris Jordan. He's going to go over our helicopter flight operations that impact the east side of the airport. He's going to show examples of how things go in a perfect world, and he's going to show examples of deviations that can sometimes occur. We've got 2 examples that actually led to a complaint. So after that, we will open it up for all of your questions and answers. And with that, we'll flip to the next slide and turn it back to Travis.
Thanks, Jack. So this slide here, it kind of shows an outline of the Bend Airport and what happens on a daily basis, both just at Bend and Central Oregon in general. So one thing we wanted to talk about is just really how busy the airspace is in Bend. And I mean, I think most people on this call can recognize that's the case, not just for the airport, but all of Central Oregon, right? Things are getting busier. People are moving here. That includes operations at the airport. So this on the left here, let me do this laser pointer thing real quick. So over here on the left, this is the local airports. These are all airports that we use for flight training. It may seem like we're only at the Bend Airport, but we go to Prineville, we go to Sun River, we go to Madras, we go to Redmond. And then here is the kind of operation levels for each of those local airports. So Bend, of course, is very busy, has a ton of operations. So is Redmond, so is Madras. Redmond is more busy now that they had a flight training provider come into Redmond. So that makes it more challenging for us to go and do things at the Redmond Airport. They've also had an uptick in commercial operations, not recently, but you know, because of COVID, a lot of the airlines quit flying, but now those are coming back. We're starting to see those commercial operations pick up. So this on the right is the airport operation. Just quickly, an operation is one loop around the airport, right? So we call it a traffic pattern. So this breaks down, and these numbers come out of the master plan from 2013, 2015, HOA environmental assessment. So these are validated by the FAA. The FAA reviewed these. The methodology of how they were developed was verified. So you can see here, I mean, I think today we're talking a lot about helicopters, but this is operations at the Bend Airport in helicopters in 2010. 2014, 2015 were our busiest helicopter years. And then this is 2018. So you can see the decrease in operations. In 2014, 2015, we flew about 10,000 hours a year in helicopters. Last couple of years, that number has decreased to 7,000. Some of that has to do with diverting attention to the huge pilot shortage that they see in the airlines. That drove the airplane operations to increase. So that's these numbers that you see here. So you can see a huge increase in airplane operations for flight training. So what does all this mean? It means the Bend Airport is very busy, right? So starting in around 2014, we worked with the city of Bend, their engineers for the master plan with the FAA, both the FSDO office and the airport office. And we developed a revision to the Fly Friendly program, right? So this is City of Bend website. This is we have the actual Fly Friendly planner? Yeah, okay. So this is where you can find the Fly Friendly brochure. So first off, let's talk about what does that mean, Fly Friendly, right? Everyone thinks, oh, that's great, that sounds great. So this is a program that's developed at most busy airports. It is voluntary in nature, and it is published for the flying public to see, right? So does that mean that every pilot that flies into Bend has looked at the Fly Friendly program? No. It means they have to go out and actually reach and find that information. So some aviators are professional and they go and find that if they're going to go into an unfamiliar airport, and they say, okay, what is this airport? What specific things do they have to make it so that neighbors are not upset? So this is where to find it. If you're flying in, if you fly to Boise, they'll have a similar airport, they'll have a similar Fly Friendly brochure. So through that process, we changed and developed the Fly Friendly program, which we use today. So on here, it depicts this green box is the airplane pattern. So this is what airplanes use. And then this orange box is what helicopters use. The red area denotes noise sensitive areas. So these are typically residents, typically areas that they discourage people from doing a lot of overflights over. But as you can see, the pattern still goes over these noise sensitive areas. The airplane pattern is at 1,000 feet above the ground. The helicopter pattern is at 500 feet above the ground. All of this was developed taking into consideration safety in the air, as well as how can we mitigate noise impacts to those on the ground. The reason why the helicopters are always on the east side and airplanes are always on the west side is to separate those traffic, because airplanes do things one way, helicopters do things another way, right? So that's the same reason this traffic pattern for helicopters is at 500 feet above the ground. Airplanes are at 1,000 feet. All of that's for safety. The other piece, typically, if you're landing on one runway, you do a pattern on one side of the airport. If you're landing the opposite direction, you do it on the other side. So this is what the FAA calls this non-standard traffic pattern. So that is some of the non-standard piece of it. That's published. People see that. They just don't necessarily see the noise sensitive areas. But that's one of the things that will cause deviations when we go and, like, as Chris will talk later, sometimes we deviate from these patterns, right? Because everyone says, man, if you just fly this pattern, it'd be great. But sometimes things happen, right? Bend Airport doesn't have a control tower. It is the busiest uncontrolled airport in the state. So what that means is it's like an uncontrolled intersection if you're driving around. So it's up to the users of the airport to see and avoid other people in the airspace. So because we have a non-standard pattern, because some pilots may not notice that or see that, we may have to deviate from this pattern just for the safety of those in the air and on the ground. So that is the noise. This is Fly Friendly program. This is kind of a background how it's developed. There was a public hearing process. There was input from the users of the airport. It took about 2 years to develop this current program. It was implemented in 2016. We do everything we can to maintain this pattern when we're flying helicopters. There are times that we have to deviate from this established pattern. So I'll turn it over to Chris. He'll talk about what that means when we're flying in the air.
All right. So I'm going to start from left and move right. We have 3 practice areas that we use for helicopter operations and airplane operations. We have a south practice that's out south and east of China Hat Road and Highway 20. And we have a west practice area that is about 8 miles to the west of the Bend Airport out in kind of the foothills of the Cascades. And then we have an east practice area that is beyond Cimarron City and about 4.5 to 5 miles east. So the first one we're going to talk about is how a helicopter gets from the Bend Airport out to the South Practice area. So you can see a typical flight path here, leaving Bend, heading out south, and departing southeast. I've advised all of our guys and gals to climb up to 1,000 feet AGL once they've departed the traffic pattern here in town, or sorry, here in Bend, and fly 1,000 feet southeast bound out to the South Practice area. Same thing when they come back in, 1,000 feet AGL, and then right about in here where they come out of the farm country and housing areas, they can drop down to 500 feet, which is our pattern altitude, link up with Gibson Air Road here east of the airport, and fly into the traffic pattern on the east side, the helicopter traffic pattern here. So that's how our helicopters get out to the southeast. This next picture here would denote a helicopter that needs to depart the Bend Airport and head to the west. They'll take off the runway or parallel taxiway here, do their upwind. This is their crosswind. This would be their downwind. And they're going to depart at 4,000 feet MSL, which is 500 feet above the ground, and right down Butler Market Road here. And then once they get clear of the airplane traffic pattern, which is above them by 500 feet, they will then climb up to 1,000 to 1,500 feet above the ground over the city of Bend and head out to our west practice area. For east practice, helicopter leaves the Bend Airport, and we try to hug this tree line here in between this farmland, our neighbors. This is Cimarron City here. So we leave the airport, head out east, 500 AGL. Once we're clear of the traffic pattern, climb up to 1,000. And then our east practice area, it starts here and moves another 5 miles to the east. On their way back in from the east practice area, we link up with Powell Butte Highway at the Pronghorn Junction and slowly descend down to 500 feet AGL by the time we get into our traffic pattern here north of Cimarron City and come into either the parallel taxiway or the runway. So that's south practice, west practice, and east practice departures. And this is a zoomed in image of our typical traffic pattern here in Bend. So a perfect traffic pattern would, like I said, taking off the runway here, crosswind, this would be their downwind. They're at 500 feet AGL during this downwind. They would continue this downwind until their base leg, which is here, and then they'll turn final into the taxiway or the runway. What we sometimes have to do is make a deviation that looks like this circle here, which you can see would go into the noise sensitive area. What I have made very clear to our helicopter instructors is that a maneuver like this is just to be done if you have a traffic conflict that you could possibly get close to in this sector here. So their typical pattern is going to remain along this road and not break into this noise sensitive area unless they have a traffic conflict out here where they need to provide spacing for that other aircraft so that they don't cause a conflict with that aircraft. We have gotten away from doing circles for spacing that are just to complete a maneuver and just mandated that they only do this if it's a traffic conflict. So that's one thing that we are doing to help our neighbors and alleviate that stress right over their heads here in this area.
So this is our contact information, our website. There's flightradar24.com. That's where we got all of those images that you see. If you can go to Flight Radar and it shows every aircraft that is currently flying, you can click on that and it shows their historical flight path. And then the main phone number here, Jack's email address is here, and the email addresses are easy. It's just first initial, last name @flybend.com. Chris's email address is here, and then my email address is the bottom. So like Jack said in the beginning, our entire program is a professional pilot program. So part of that is being a professional when you're in the air. So we want to learn, we want to see, if you see one of our aircraft that's doing something wrong, we want to know about it, because we will take action. The more details that you have, time of day, if you're able to get on flight radar and look up an N number, if you can see an N number, all of that stuff is very helpful with figuring out what happened and why it happened, and see if we can make that not happen again. So with that, I will turn it back over to the city and you guys can handle questions.
All righty. Thank you, Jack, Travis, and Chris. Hopefully that was informative to the individuals who are on the call and have answered some of the questions that may have been outstanding. If not, this is now the opportunity for the individuals on the call to voice your concern and ask a question, and we're here. We're listening and we care. So
Juan is going to show from IT is going to show how to raise your hand, although people have already raised it, and how to do it if you're calling in.
thank you. And so as you're going through the guidelines on how to participate in voicing your concern or asking a question, what I would request is that if you would state your name for the record so that we know who we're talking to and I can appropriately acknowledge you. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over.
Tracy, if you don't mind, I see that we have a couple community members who are joining us via their phones. So for them, I like to let them know that they can also raise their hand by using the keypad on their telephones and pressing the star key followed by the number 9. And that will signal also that they have raised their hand and that they're willing to participate. And then we can call on them too based on their phone number. And then once we call on them, we'll provide them the ability to unmute themselves, and they'll also be using the keypad on their telephone. And to unmute themselves, they'll need to press the star key followed by the number 6. And they'll hear those instructions also on the phone once we provide them the ability to unmute themselves. So, but for now, star 9 will raise their hand, and then we can call on them.
Thanks, Juan. You're awesome. All right.
So for now, we have the first person who had their hand raised. Hang on a second. Shoot, hang on. Signed in as Warmstrong. So you can unmute yourself, or you should be able to in a second. How come this is not working? There you go. Allow to talk. There you go. You are unmuted.
So I have a question. I was a student at Leading Edge as a private pilot. So I'm familiar with their training practices. What I'm unfamiliar with is what type of training involves circling my house and flipping me off at less than 100 feet off the rooftop of my house. And further, why did it take an FAA investigation to get any answers about this occurring over my house for an extended period of time and causing me significant financial harm?
Thank you for the question. So our emails were in the presentation. If you have any pictures or any other information about that, we will investigate it. We have not heard from the FAA about any kind of investigation into an event as you described, but that behavior is absolutely unacceptable. If it was an instructor, they would be terminated. If it's a student, they would be kicked out of the program. So any information that you have or could share, we will vigorously investigate.
And who is this that I'm speaking to?
Travis.
Travis, I spoke to you a while back, And I did provide you with pictures
I
and
never
aware
received anything.
information.
So if you would mind sending them again, I never received anything the first time, so.
Oh, you actually said, I have the call recorded. You actually said that you saw the pictures and you forwarded my contact information to one of your other coworkers, and he called me up and basically denied all allegations of it. And that's when I told you folks that I was going to move forward with an FAA complaint. And Paul Hersher from the DSHO up there in Portland is the one that's doing the investigation currently.
Great, we look forward to talking to Paul.
Okay. But what type of training does that entail with that type of circling? I'm just kind of confused.
Like I said, that would be unacceptable behavior, and if we find out somebody's doing that, they would either be terminated as an employee or kicked out of the program as a student.
But I asked you guys for a course of almost 2 years who is doing this before I was made aware of the app called Flight Aware, who the state police was able to provide me that information after I made a complaint to them.
Like I said, if you give us information, we'll follow up, and we look forward to talking to the FAA or the sheriff or whoever else we'd like to talk to about it.
And so,
Okay.
Mr. Warmster, thank you so very much for sharing that.
Armstrong.
I'm sorry, Armstrong. Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Armstrong. Yes, I think that Travis may have enough information to be able to follow up with you offline separate. And as much as your concern is valid and we care, we have a limited time. So I want to move on to the next person. So thank you for sharing. Appreciate it. And it's recorded, so we'll have a ability to get back to you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, sir. All right, next, Kathy.
Hello, this is Allison Adams. I had a question. You mentioned that often you have to deviate from the flight patterns for safety. I just didn't know if you've been able to quantify how often you're coming into those situations.
I don't think it's often. I mean, the airspace is very, very busy. So I don't know that we could define, hey, this happens twice a day, once a day. I think it's relatively rare, but it does happen. And we acknowledge that it happens. I think the biggest single factor that we could do to remove those deviations would be a control tower. The city of Bend, along with several of the users at the airport, have been advocating for a tower for several years. We are on the list, pretty high priority on the list for a tower, but it really comes down to the FAA and funding and their priorities. We've talked to the Oregon Department of Aviation about a control tower. All of those things would help. If we have people that come in from out of the area and they're unfamiliar with how we do things, or we have a bigger, larger, faster aircraft that's coming in, a lot of times we do everything we can to get out of the way of those aircraft. So that's where those deviations come from. A tower would really help minimize those or even eliminate them.
So Travis, are you, or Tracy, are you tracking sort of these safety conflicts and traffic conflicts to get an idea of, when it becomes unsafe, and when, if it's 10% of the time, I think that's tolerable, but if it is 50%, 70% of the time, and you're constantly having to deviate for safety over these private properties in the sensitive noise zone, what kind of further steps can be taken to make sure it's safe and that deviation isn't the rule, but rather the exception?
So first, those deviations are to eliminate close calls, that we call, right? So if we see an aircraft that it could be a potential conflict in the air, that's why they'll do those circle for spacing is what we'll call it, right? So we'll circle for spacing if we hear or see an aircraft that's coming into pattern that could create those close calls in the air. Close calls where we we have a safety reporting system. Those are reported to us. We track those and take those very seriously. We also share those with the airport office out of Seattle to help with our efforts to get the FAA to really pay attention that a control tower is needed here. So I'm sorry if it wasn't clear, but those circle for spacings are not necessarily immediate safety concerns in the air. We do that to eliminate those possibilities.
Gotcha. So is this data publicly available so we can see if it's, you know, statistically insignificant or statistically significant number?
I don't know if the FAA publishes their close calls for uncontrolled airports. I know that we report them. I know they do publish close calls for some of the bigger airports, but I don't know that answer. Maybe Tracy knows. Our internal safety information is not public.
Thank you. And then just my last question, and then I'll turn it over, is in your context slide, you did show that Bend is, you know, getting 3 times as much traffic as some of the other Central Oregon airports. So as you're looking at expanding operations, are you also considering perhaps expanding those operations some of the less busy airports, or do you have reasons why it all needs to be focused on Bend?
Well, we don't focus all of our operations here. Like I said, we go to all of the local airports. So like as an example, we have a rule that we can only have 3 helicopters in the pattern at Bend at any one time. So if there are 3 helicopters in the pattern and a 4th one goes to take off and do a training event, they have to go somewhere else. So they'll go to Redmond, or they'll go to Prineville, they'll go to Madras. So we do use the other airports. As far as our office and what we do, the Bend Airport works very well for that. A lot of our students are from the local community college, so to have them drive to Prineville to do training events would be, you know, difficult for them. So really just to keep accessibility to everyone, the Bend Airport and its proximity to COCC and the other students that we have, it really makes the most sense for our base of operation. But we do use all the other local airports.
Okay, thank you, Travis. And I just would ask that you balance convenience for your students and accessibility with, considerations from the neighbors as well.
Of course.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you, Travis, for that response. And so we're ready now, Kathy, for our next caller.
Hi there. My name is Keely Belding. I'm an East Side neighbor here. Travis, I believe we've spoken before. We keep hearing sometimes we deviate out of safety. We deviate sometimes. When all actuality, we are seeing this is the new norm, and this is not very rare. This is very frequently happening. The deviation seems to be your new daily normal operations for leading edge. If this is the case and you're constantly deviating out of safety or other reasons, aren't you technically out of the flight pattern that was created in order for you to operate leading edge at the Bend Airport? And if so, what are we doing to address this? Because I know that you guys are looking to bring on more helicopters in this location, if I'm not mistaken. And I did read Tracy's interview that there also have about 50 people on the wait list for private planes to bring into Bend.
So the Fly Friendly program, like I said in the beginning, is developed as a baseline, right? But it isn't to call, I probably used the wrong word, right? The 360 for spacing isn't necessarily deviation. It's standard. It's a standard procedure that even at towered airports, though, like if they don't cycle something correctly, they'll say, do it right 360 for spacing. It's no different than when you're on a commercial airliner. Sometimes they'll put you in a hold. That is all to space the aircraft out to maintain the safety. So as the airport gets busier and without somebody overseeing the traffic and managing that spacing early in the process, with people coming in without the local knowledge, all of that stuff, yes, it'll increase the requirements to do 360 for spacing. The Fly Friendly program, Go ahead.
Are we addressing this as we see it more frequently? Now that the traffic is increasing, you guys are bringing on more helicopters to your school. Is this being addressed? And are you looking at a new flight pattern, maybe not over homes, but maybe out on all of the BLM that surrounds us?
Well, the flight pattern is so that you can use the airport. So to make it like we do, a lot of our practice we do out to the east of the BLM or to the west, you know, private property out there. So the traffic pattern has to be by the runway, by the airport itself. So there was a lot of work that went into developing the existing patterns that are established, and they're a guideline. But it's still the pilot in the aircraft is their responsibility to do what they need to do to safely operate the aircraft. So whether they need to extend a pattern, whether they need to do a 360 for spacing, all of that stuff is standard with using the airport that's here. We're not looking to add a ton of aircraft. I don't know. I'm not sure where you got that information, but like I said in the beginning, when we talked about operations, our busiest helicopter operations were 2014 and 2015. We're only at 70% of that today. So we'll see marginal growth, but nothing crazy. I mean, it's not like we're talking about doubling the helicopter fleet, you know, anything like that. We fly 5 of the smaller training aircraft and 2 of the larger ones for instrument training. And then we have a fleet of aircraft that we use for firefighting. So we're not planning on any significant helicopter fleet size growth. We're really just meeting the market demand.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Travis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate you for calling in and participating. There's probably others who had a similar question. And so now I'm going to ask Kathy to move on to the next person. Thank you.
Sarah Robertson.
Yeah, hi, Sarah Robertson. I'm also a member of the PAC committee, and I also wanted to say that one reason why I joined the PAC was because I wanted to see meetings like this. I think that interacting and understanding each other's sides is beneficial, very, very beneficial. And I would like to see these continue if possible. I think it answers a lot of questions, not only for the local homeowners, which I am a neighbor to the west. And I've seen some improvement. I've talked to some people from Leading Edge. I have worked with our previous airport manager, but I think my main goal is to just say thank you. And I think keeping the communications open is very important.
We agree. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate that. Who's next, Kathy?
Somebody that by phone call, your last digits on your phone are 7669.
Okay. Thank you. Can you hear?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. All right. So my name's Tom Maddox. I live east of the airport, and I think some clarification should be made about this tower. The city of Bend can build the tower, and the FFA is going to fund the operations. It's already been approved. So it's up to the city to build the tower, and it could be done by floating a bond. And if you would float the bond, you could build the tower, do the rest of the heliport improvements, and move the helicopters up into the northeast corner where they belong. So, you know, the city ought to be given some consideration to floating a bond to improve things at the airport. It would help a lot. So, Travis, we're experiencing the same problems with Leading Edge that we have since the helicopter school came in. When we talk to Leading Edge, it improves for about 2 weeks. Then we're right back to where we were. Last fall, I had one of your helicopters playing touch and go on the east side and circling over me in the field 3 times while I'm out in my field working at an elevation way under 500. He was just clearing treetops. So these problems aren't getting addressed when we talk to Leading Edge. We're getting blown off. It's not being taken care of. And the last time I called you guys and talked to talked to someone at Leading Edge. The response I got from the individual Leading Edge was, go call McDonald's. They can help you as much as I will. Very unprofessional.
If one of our employees told you that, I would like to know who it is, because they will no longer be an employee. We are here, we're having this meeting. We want to hear from you guys. We want details. We will not tolerate behavior like that.
Well, you know, your flight patterns show flying basically over the airport property, and it's getting really, really sloppy that they're coming further east in their north-south flights to where they're flying over the first two sets of properties directly east of the airport constantly. They're not holding tight back over the airport property and staying away from the private properties east of the airport. We are literally in the flight pattern now because they just keep drifting further and further east. So if you could get those birds back over there to where they're not flying any further than the airport property line east, that would be a big help for those of us living east of the airport too.
Well, we monitor Flight Radar 24. It has GPS position of the aircraft all the time. If we see people that are drifting, we'll remind them that you need to keep the pattern really tight. The pattern is very tight. It is really non-standard tight. And we do that to really help the neighbors as much as we can. It's still an airport. There's still property that's adjacent to the airport, but we really do everything we can while maintaining the safety in the air to really minimize the impact of those on the ground.
Okay, so explain the differences in the altitudes of their flying. When some of the guys will take off, but get up there and they'll fly, and they're not bad for noise. Some of them will be right down on top of the trees doing their flying. So what's the difference?
There should be no one flying that low over the properties to the east. So if you see that, just note the time. We'll go back and play the flight. And if they really are that low, we'll deal with it. They should be at 500 feet when they're along Gibson Air Road. And there really is no reason for them to be less than that.
Well, that was my thought. And that's why I was hoping you could provide information as to why someone would be deviating from, you know, they can't hit and go straight up to 500. We realize that. But, you know, when they're out flying, coming back in, and they're down at 100, 150 feet, they're way too low over our homes.
I agree. If somebody was flying that low on the east side of that, during that downwind leg, we would deal with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate you for calling in and expressing that concern. And Kathy, if you could move on to the next person.
Aaron?
Hello. I guess first I want to just say thank you for organizing the meeting and for all of you guys being here and participating with this. One of the first things, I guess, well, also I wanted to also say that thanks for that I don't get a ton of traffic, but I do get some, enough that I pay attention to it. And so looking at kind of the overall of kind of what we're at right now with the current traffic load that we have with the helicopters and then causing emergency loops and the need for an FAA tower to be added to it, and then the potential for a Bend Airport expansion, I can only imagine how much more traffic we would have out here. You know, just in my mind, that somewhat sounds awful. I know that I live near an airport, but just thinking about what it's at now, how many flights are coming in and out, how many more complaints would be happening. And then, you know, I think you know, when I think about what we're doing out here, I think about the flight restrictions. I think, well, that's one of the ways to limit and to slow the growth of the airport. You know, as the airport does, you know, as you guys expand and as the airport looks at expanding, and I think about the concerns as they go across the greater area going into Bend, how many more complaints you guys will be looking at. And I guess one of the ways I see it as a restricting way of slowing some of this down is by slowing that input of adding a tower to what we have out here, adding to that increased amount of traffic that's in our airspace. increasing the noise that we're always looking at, increasing the number of complaints that come in from people watching these helicopters fly over. I mean, I don't know what is planned, but I would be curious of like the number of helicopters now, and then what you're expecting to expand, and then whether you're relying on that expansion to be able to add more of what we see as noise and traffic, and as what I'm sure you see as revenue. So I guess clarify. Hopefully I quantified that right. So
No, sure. Yeah.
go ahead.
So this meeting is about helicopters, but helicopters, as far as number of operations at the Bend Airport, helicopter is not the largest. We do have a lot of operations. Leading edge between the airplane and the helicopters, we're probably the largest number of operations out of the Bend traffic, but we're not it, right? I mean, people come in from all over the place. The airport's very busy. It's very busy, just like Bend is very busy, right? And so, like, to talk about the control tower and, hey, we shouldn't put it in because it'll encourage traffic. That's like saying, hey, we shouldn't put the parkway in, or we shouldn't put a stoplight in, or, hey, why did they do a roundabout on Powell View Highway? Those are all safety measures, right? They're to help with those intersections. The people are gonna come, the traffic is gonna come here. So it's really up to the city and the FAA and us users to say, hey, this traffic's here and it's increasing daily. And it's not just leading edge, it's everywhere. It's traffic all over the place, right? So do we want to wait until, God forbid, somebody gets hurt, or do we want to be proactive and put in those safety features to make it so something like that doesn't happen? So that's our view on the control tower. The traffic's coming, the airport's getting busier. It has been getting busier for the last 15 years. Just like I hate to have to wait for the stoplight in front of Lowe's, but I do, right? So do we ignore it and say it's not going to happen, or do we be proactive and try and put in things to make it so that they're safer?
Yeah, and I guess my feelings are that maybe we should decrease the cause for the demand to use the airport, right? Sure, we have lots of people out here, but we have a lot of people flying in for one reason for the most part. And a lot of the traffic that we have coming to the airport is for one reason. I'm sure there are lots of people out there who would love to have a hangar at the Bend Airport, but can't because those facilities are already being taken by another company, right? So why would we want to increase more and more demand because you want to expand a business? I mean, that's the way it feels to us.
I don't know that leading edge is creating the largest amount of growth at the Bend Airport. I mean, the waiting list from the city for T hangars is much longer in number than we will add in aircraft in the next 5 years. So the demand is there, and it's not just from us. And the demand, Central Oregon's growing, and I mean, it's a fact of life.
And then you feel that those people, if they had a hangar, they would be causing as much traffic as you are?
I don't know. I don't know that answer. I mean,
couldn't imagine it.
There are people that fly a lot. I mean, there's a 135 airplane charter operator here that flies constantly. So
twice a day, I think, right?
I don't know, but I know he flies a lot.
30,000 times a year.
Well, we operate 30 something aircraft. So
that's a lot.
Yeah, agreed. It's busy.
So Aaron, thank you so very much for calling in and expressing your interest. I do have other people who are monitoring the call and waiting to be in the queue. Your concerns have not gone unanswered or not acknowledged, even if I didn't respond to those directly. You're on the record, and those are the concerns and considerations that we, the City of Bend, will be looking into and addressing as we pursue the air traffic control tower for the Bend Airport, where our users are coming from and what they're planning to do after they're based here. So even though you may not have had a full answer to the concerns that you've expressed, definitely rest assured we'll be looking into that further, and even if I don't reply to you directly, but if I have your contact information, I will. And give you a more precise response. But if I don't, please accept that I definitely will be. And with that, Kathy, I want to move on to the next caller. Thank you.
Okay, we do have 5 people with their hands raised. We only have 5 minutes, just so you know.
Thank you.
Cheryl? Sherel?
Yes. Hi. Hi, Kathy. Thank you, Tracy. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, we have acreage east of the airport. And our concern has been that it has become busier and busier and busier. I think I would jump on board with Aaron in that I think that the training school definitely exponentially increases the busyness as opposed to private pilots in and out. And I know the program has been expanding and expanding. About how many students do you have in the program?
Currently, we have around 200 students.
And what has the 200 now, and how's that growth been, say, in the last 5 years even?
Helicopter, like Travis said, is about 70% of its previous peak. Airplane is higher than it's been previously. Overall, the scope of operations is very little changed in terms of total number of students in aircraft the last several years.
So your total number of students hasn't changed very much?
It's increased on the fixed wing side, which has helped to offset some of the decrease we've seen on helicopter.
All right. And so doing the school in the busiest uncontrolled airspace in the state, where pilots that are unfamiliar with the non-standard traffic patterns coming in and out, it almost seems as if you're just begging for issues that impact a rural area where we have had farmland and animals and crops and things that are averse to the noise, the pollution from the aircraft and helicopters, the busyness. And one of my main things that drew attention to, I guess, really noticing is it seems like there's no hours that are off limits for the helicopters to be doing their runs. I mean, at 1 in the morning, 1:30 in the morning, 11 at night, I'll be driving down Erickson and there's a helicopter hovering, and then doing a lot with lights on, doing a line into the airport from Prineville at 1:30, 2 in the morning. I'll hear these helicopters and I'm going, it's just kind of, it's alarming to have helicopters going at hours of the night when you don't know why they would be going. If it's flight school and training, it seems very, I mean, I guess flying at night could be done anytime after dark, but to do it in the wee morning hours doesn't seem particularly considerate of this rural area. So my vote would be to try and keep the Bend Municipal Airport a little rural airport that's used for those people that need to fly in and out in their planes or helicopters for business purposes, And the school aspect, without some limitations, it seems like it just is exacerbating what looks to be a growing concern in both of those areas anyway, and creating all the downside comes to the people that have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in real estate in this area. And you are the ones that are having the increases in revenue and business while we're struggling to get any increases in the current environment in the rural ag business. So I just wanted to voice my concern, and I wanted an answer to why those flights would be happening in the middle of the night.
Well, I can address the nighttime to it. So the FAA requires a certain amount of night flight in order for somebody to get their rating, right? Part of that also includes a long night flight to an airport that's far away. So they have to take off when it's dark. They have to go to the airport, land at that airport, and come back. So that's why it's not right at nightfall and we go and get their requirements in and then they're done. They also have to go and fly somewhere else. So those are all meeting FAA nighttime requirements. The other piece that we do, which is relatively small, is we train students for night vision goggle flying. Those operations are not typically done with patterns at the airport. They have to do a few, but most of those are done away from the airport. But they're learning to fly using aided night vision, which is, you know, very common in like emergency medical transport as an example, right? So EMS helicopters use night vision. We are one of the schools that somebody can go to and get certified to fly using night vision goggles. So that's the reason why we fly at night. We really limit night operations to only the requirements because it is a higher risk, right? So it's a lot easier to fly during the day, but you also have to learn how to fly at night.
And it appears that it's 7 days a week. He's training even on Sundays. I mean, this is on Sundays there just seems to be no day that there isn't a possible activity.
Yes, we fly 7 days a week.
And sure.
The nighttime operations are really weather dependent. So if there's a weather window and it's on a Sunday, then yes, we do those night operations on Sunday.
All right. Well, I just wanted to voice my concern. I think there are several issues that really need consideration, and I appreciate you listening to what I had to say, and we'll hope that something positive can come out of it.
Thank you, Cheryl, so much for sharing. Your concerns have been heard. And I appreciate Travis and Leading Edge for responding. There may be others with similar concerns. In the interest of time, we're running out. But one thing that I would like to close with is to inform our airport neighbors that may not have been aware. The airport is a public use facility. It is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we are unable to discriminate against users of the air traffic control system or limit their ability to take off and land at their discretion, particularly since there's not an air traffic control tower that can help with aircraft separation or anything like that. We're working on it. Hopefully we'll have an air traffic control tower within the next 5 years. But I do appreciate everybody for participating, sharing the concerns. If you had an opportunity to participate, thank you. If you didn't and still want to reach out, Leading Edge Aviation has provided their contact information. And if you received the notice for this meeting from me, you got mine as well. So thank you all so very much. Be safe And that's all I have right now. I don't know that I have enough time for Leading Edge to provide any closing remarks. I will leave it to our IT people to let me know how much time we got left. Thanks.
It's up to you, Tracy. We're at 7:05.
Leading Edge Aviation, Travis, Chris, Brad, anybody, you got anything you want to?
We gave contact information out. I thank the city for putting this on. We always like to hear from our neighbors, whether they like us or don't like us, it doesn't matter. We're a member of the community and we want to be a member and hear what people have to say. So feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Travis. Hey, anybody from the county? Got anything? It's up to you. I put you on the spot.
Hi, Peter Russell, Senior Transportation Planner for Deschutes County. Thanks again for inviting us here. As you know, the airport has the interesting aspect of being city-owned and county-governed in terms of land use. I will point out that when an aircraft leaves the ground, it's no longer under county or city jurisdiction. It's under the FAA. And when the city finishes updating their Bend Airport Master Plan, there'll be a round of land use hearings in front of the county where the public can also testify and make their concerns. We don't have a timeline for that yet, but that is a future action that we'll have a notice for. And again, I thank everybody for giving up their evening to come and talk about airport issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Century West Aviation, our consultant. Anything?
Yeah, this is Matt Rogers, Century West. I tried to start my video, but it didn't come on. Tracy, we just want to say thank you to you and Leading Edge for holding this discussion. It's good to hear from the airport neighbors about their concerns. And I do want to note that there is an ongoing airport master plan. We have public meetings where we invite anybody from the public interested in the airport to come and attend. The notices and announcements for that are on the City of Bend website. There's also an email you can sign up if you're interested, and we can send you emails for that. So look for those opportunities to come out, find out what's going on with regard to the airport master plan, and provide comments if you have them. So thanks, Tracy.
Thank you, Matt. And I've got a couple of city airport officials on. I'm not going to call you out, but if any city official who's online wants to weigh in, here's your opportunity now. Okay, so not hearing anything, I want to end with saying thank you, everyone who participated in this call, whether you spoke or text or emailed. Thank you. Appreciate you. And if there's anything after this, if you are on this call, you heard from me directly, so you know how to reach me. So please don't hesitate. Thank you all so very much. This will be streamed and available almost immediately on the city's YouTube channel. So thank you all very much. Appreciate your interest and be safe. Good night.